So for our last speaker, Ms. Angela Burt is currently Executive Director of the Dunbar Historic Neighborhood Association. Their mission is to preserve the cultural history of the city's most prominent African American, where landmarks, homes, and businesses reside. Those great landmarks and former residents include attorney Scipio A. Jones, composer Florence B. Price, businessman John E. Bush, and attorney Mifflin Gibbs. She also oversees the administration, programming, and strategic plan of the DHNA, including fundraising, marketing, and community outreach. The high-energy community leader has a passion for art, humanities, and social justice. Ms. Burt serves as Chief Creative and Marketing Officer of Arkansas Black Vitality Magazine, which is an emerging publication and news outlet to the state that offers its audience lifestyle, health, and community insight affecting Black consumers in Arkansas and the U.S. She is also the host of the Black Consumer News Talk radio show, which discusses business, politics, finance, local and national headlines, as well as events around the state. Ms. Burt is the former Chief Creative Officer of Remix Ideas Incorporated, a local start accelerator that helps women, Black and minority entrepreneurs start and grow their early stage businesses. Her role includes serving as host and spokesperson for Remix's highly successful Little Rock Night Market and Pitch Challenge events. Angel Burt is one of Central Arkansas's most versatile and talented business professionals, event organizers, and entrepreneurs, currently serving as Chief Executive Officer of Cosmic Business Consultant. Angela's personal motto is, if you don't know, you can't do, but when you find out, you better get busy. So please give her a round of applause.
All right. How many of you are from the Dunbar community? Got one. How many of you have ancestors or grandparents that went to Dunbar School? Whoa. Love seeing that. The Dunbar community is a legacy, a living legacy. We are, I feel, an anomaly in this city because we're still standing and we still have something to talk about and something to honor. And speaking of honor, I'd like to say that I am honored to be here today. I'm honored to be asked to present by the Black History Commission. I appreciate Tatiana for all the hard work that she has done in putting this event together. Let's give her a round of applause. I also appreciate you for being here today. I'd truly like to say that Dunbar for me, as a young girl, I don't know how many of you guys remember summer programs, either EOA or OIC, or youth programs around the city. Well, I worked in one of those youth programs. I tell people I've been working since I was in the 9th grade. And I worked in the Dunbar community behind the Arkansas Baptist College. And I used to walk through the neighborhood to get to my friend's house that I worked with through Dunbar. And I would think, man, these houses are so nice. Businesses are everywhere. The energy was just overwhelming for a little girl like myself. And I used to think, I want to live here. Little did I know, years and years later, that I would live in the Dunbar Historic District. I raised my children in Dunbar. My mom went to Dunbar School, Dunbar High School, and I am a true stakeholder of the Dunbar Historic District. I'm here today to honor our title of today's workshop, Cultural Significance of Building in the Community. I think all of the speakers prior to me has painted a glorious picture of exactly what that actually means. Today, I title my lecture as Blueprint of Greatness. And what you'll hear today is a lot of interchanging. You'll hear a lot of the same names that have already been mentioned, some of the same sites that have been mentioned, because greatness is just greatness. And when it's great and it's still around, it's significant to us all. I tell people this all the time, that when you talk about legacy, all of our legacies are important. No one's legacy needs to be left unturned, left unknown about. So I think we live in a time now where we're trying to erase legacy. Let's not erase anyone's legacy, right? And we can see that right here in this room. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Dunbar was a dream come true, a beacon for those who sought freedom and a future after centuries of bondage. After the Emancipation Proclamation formally enslaved people across the country searching for opportunity and dignity, one of the cities they came to was Little Rock, Arkansas. Once known as the land of opportunity, we are now known as the natural state. But that land of opportunity, especially during Reconstruction, was very significant to us. Because if something's named the land of opportunity, where are we trying to get to? We're trying to get to the opportunity, right? So a community built by visionaries, educators, artists, entrepreneurs, freedom fighters. Also, without Dunbar, there would be no Little Rock 9. They all went to Dunbar Junior High, high school, and junior college. Everybody give a round of applause for that? And the reason that I say that is because I truly believe that that is an intricate, missing part of our educational system, right? Dunbar School was a pipeline to education. Because if you're a junior high school, a junior college where you get your prerequisites, then where are you going to school next? In a segregated community, a black community, you're going to PSU, you're going to ABC, you're going to Philander Smith University, you're going to Arkansas Baptist College. Do we get it, our educators? I think that is a perfect model. So again, as I connect with you today, and we think about the word blueprint, let's think about that. What did the legacies or these icons, our ancestors, leave behind to give us the tools and the resources to carry on, modernize what they did for today? Because we seem a little bit shuffled right now, almost in shambles for some, especially in our nation. So as we talk about the blueprint and trying to figure out what to do we really already know what to do? I think the gentleman that just left before me, looking at his team that's here with him now, is a diverse team of people working together to make change happen, okay? Even during Reconstruction, I think Kelly was saying, that train, we were all on that train. So that kind of lets us know that while we don't have to do things exactly the same, because things aren't exactly the same, they're different, we can modernize them and improve them today. So why are we here? Why does legacy really matter? What does historic truly mean? History is not just something we remember, it is something we live. We're all building legacies now. We are all greatness now. We should not limit ourselves or our thoughts on those things, on those significant things at all. Because I guarantee you, Martin Luther King and some of the people that we talked about here today, John E. Bush, no one says, I'm going to be a legacy, I'm going to be an ancestor, they're going to be talking about me, 200 years from now. No, you live from your heart, you live from your passion. You live because you care about people. That really builds legacy. And I truly believe that this room is filled with those people. I am very, very proud to say that Dunbar Historic District is the first African-American, American-African Black community here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And so we're here to honor not just history, but the blueprint of greatness. Talk about dreams and hopes and aspirations and triumphs. A lot of those things are being said today. However, a lot of great things happened, and we have to remember those great things that happened or came out of those triumphs, okay, and those atrocities. There's a lot of great things that happened anyway. One of those great things is Charlotte Stevens. Charlotte Stevens was the first African-American Black female teacher in Little Rock. She taught for over 70 years. Over 70 years. And I know we have educators here, and that is phenomenal. Truly, I have not did the in-depth research that I'd like to continue to do on Charlotte as far as that 70-year number. But I think that she is probably one of, if not the oldest teacher that taught anywhere in this nation. She started teaching at 15 years old. She also taught school at Dunbar. She was a librarian there. And while she was there, she applied for this Northwestern accredited application for the school, which means that their curriculum was high standard. To receive that nomination would have been significant for the school. She started working at the school in the 1930s. She was born in 1854, so she was probably in her late 70s when she started as a librarian. But prior to that, in her early life, she began to break barriers. And she taught in 6 different eras. 6 different eras. She taught at the end of the Civil War. She taught in World War I, World War II, Jim Crow, into the Civil Rights Movement. Right. That means she had a love for who? Our children. I mean, that is a love that is something that we can really, really be proud of, and really, really shows her significant contribution to educating our children. There was a school named after Ms. Stevens in 1910. And there's still an elementary school that's named after her today. Matter of fact, I was at that elementary school recently and really was inspired to include her in my presentation today. And as I speak, I did want to also mention this. Make sure that we all do our research, because these are just small captions about these great people. I'm sure someone's sitting out there saying, well, you know, she's forgetting about this. Well, she didn't say that, right? But it's okay, because we should do our own research anyway to make sure that the history and the information is correct. Charlotte Stevens, as I go on with the presentation, you will also find that she was a great connector to a lot of people in the Dunbar community. Not only a connector, but an inspiration to a lot of people that were in the Dunbar community. Because you have to have examples, when we talk about inspiration, that means that is something or someone that is inspiring you to do the same thing or something similar, or to bring out your greatness. And trust and believe, Charlotte Stevens was one of those people. Her connection, she paved the way for educator Sue Cowan. Remember, I spoke about that Northwestern application that she started? Well, guess who finished that application? And guess who taught at Dunbar High School at the same time that Charlotte Stevens was there? Yes, Yes, Sue Cowan. So again, we're talking about motivation. We're talking about inspiration. And so Sue Cowan was definitely a trailblazer. Sue Cowan found out that white teachers were making more money than black teachers. So she sued the Little Rock School District. Not only did she win, but she was represented by Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. At the time, that's right, give a big round of applause. At the time, he was the president of the National NAACP. So the question would be, what drove Thurgood Marshall to come here to represent Sue Cowan? The energy of the community, the prestige of the community, right? This is a lot of things that we've already been talking about. And Dunbar was certainly one of them. Sue Cowan won the respect and admiration as an educator across the South. Matter of fact, I have a great affiliation and partnership with the Dunbar alumni. And there are students, there are people that were students of hers that still talk about her with admiration, which makes my heart feel good, that this person, right, lives on not only through a library that's named after her, but people that were actually taught by her. Her classroom is still at Dunbar School, which, by the way, is on the National Historic Registry. It is also an anchor to our Dunbar Historic District. A lot of times when you get that historic nomination, especially with the homes, it's made up of a cluster of homes. It's made up of 166 homes in the Dunbar area, and on one side of the street. But they also wanted to include Dunbar School, so they came across the street and included it, and that's something that you normally don't do. But the school itself has a lot of great history and a great significance. And because of the community, it was named after Paul Laurence Dunbar. When they initially built the school, they wanted to name the school the Negro School of Industrial. And the community said, no, we're not naming that school that. But they chose Paul Laurence Dunbar to name that school after it. That's very significant. That's very, very powerful. The community also was a part of money raised to build the school. Again, very significant and powerful. And the reason I say that, because those little tidbits are the things that we need to think about as we move forward, as we look at our educational system today, and especially public education, where our children are, and we're finding those deficits. We need to come together again as a community and make sure that our children are receiving excellent education and that we are a part of that excellence, not looking on the sidelines saying what they should get, what they ought to get, but be a part of what they will receive. The connection, she walked the path laid by Charlotte Stevens. Connection, we're all connected. Florence B. Price. The book, The Heart of a Woman, written by Linda Ray Brown, was a true inspiration for myself. Not only is it a history book about Florence Price herself, but it's also a history book about the Dunbar community, about the Dunbar Historic District, which I found astonishing. I never labeled myself as a historian. I never even liked history. But after reading this book, knowing that I lived in the Dunbar community, knowing that my mom went to the Dunbar school, knowing that I taught aerobics class at Dunbar Community Center. Matter of fact, I used to have a key to the Dunbar Community Center. and wanting to live in this community as a little girl, not knowing the history. I knew people would say, all the principals and teachers used to live in this neighborhood. I knew people used to say that, but I didn't really know the significance. And after reading this book, you will know the true significance. Linda Ray Brown was a professor of music at the University of Maryland. Unfortunately, we lost her to cancer in 2018 when this book was released. But let me tell you, every time I read this book, I give her big, big hugs, because she is the reason that I really am standing here today with any knowledge really of this community. Not really the knowledge, but the knowledge, the heart to want to explore and research and find out more, because it elevates me to feel good about who I am, which direction I am going, and to be proud of who I am. So again, Linda Ray Brown, I can't really say enough about her. So let's talk about Florence B. Price. Florence started playing the piano at 4 years old. She was a child prodigy. She wrote her first composition at 11 years old. In 1902, she graduated from Union High School, valedictorian, and she was accepted into the New England Conservatory at 14. Her father was the first black dentist here in Little Rock, Dr. John Smith. And her mom, who was actually her first piano teacher, and she was also a businesswoman herself. She bought a lot of property. But the mother and the father, they didn't want Florence to go to the conservatory until she was 16. So they held her back from going. They wanted her to mature a little bit, so she went at 16 years old. While she was there, she graduated with 2 degrees. And at the conservatory, only the best students played at the beginning or at the end. And Florence played at the end. Now, going to the conservatory, no black students were accepted. No black students were accepted. So she had to go as a Spanish student, as a Mexican student, okay? She came back home after graduating, and she taught school at a college. Can anyone guess which college that was at? Where she taught? Where? College. It was HBCU. No, not for Lander, but that's a good guess. Shorter College. She taught at Shorter College for about 1 year. She's the director of music. And she left and went to Clark University, where she met her husband, Price. And he was actually an attorney here in Little Rock, and he was business partners in the business firm with Scipio Jones. So she came back and she taught music. But remember, I said she's a composer of music. And there was not a lot of opportunity for black women during this time as a composer. Can you imagine her mind and the music that she was thinking of? Well, in 1927, I know you guys, we heard the story about John Carter, the lynching Dr. Hargrove talked about, that was right here on 9th Street. Well, just a little background on that. That lynching happened because a white girl was killed, and her body was in the tower of a church. And a white man killed her, but they got him out of town. So the mob wanted to kill somebody or hurt someone, and John Carter was that person. And so they also wanted to harm a child because they had a white child that was killed. They too wanted to kill now a black child, and they wanted to kill a prominent family's black child. And that prominent family was Florence Price. She had 3 children at the time. And so Florence left the city in 1927 and moved to Chicago. She was 40 years old. So she was completely cultivated by the Dunbar Historic District. But she left, went to Chicago, and started to flourish during the Chicago Renaissance. She met a woman by the name of Margaret Bunn, and she stayed with Margaret and her mom, And Margaret was also a composer. So they used to write these compositions and submit them during competitions for composers. Well, Florence Price won the Warner Baker Prize in 1933, the highest prize a composer could win, for her symphony in E minor. And that was world news, literally. So Philander Smith, one of her students, I think it was Carruthers, wrote her a letter and asked her to come back to actually play a concert. She did not want to come back. We all understand why. However, she decided that she wanted to see the new school, Dunbar, that had been built in 1929. And because remember, she left in 27, and she wanted to see her music students, so she came back home. And it was a big hoopla for her to come back home. And she played a concert that was a sold out to both black and white tickets. And she played the concert in the auditorium at Dunbar High School at the time. That's now Dunbar Junior High School. Yay? So with that being said, she played the concert, and I think it was 25 cents tickets and 50 cents tickets, but the money she used that was given to her, she donated it back to the school, just to show you what type of heart that she had. And so in March 2021, I decided to put together a proposal to have the auditorium named after her. And the Little Rock School District voted unanimously to have that auditorium named in honor of famous composer Florence B. Price. And not only that, to have it historically renovated by the WER architects here in Little Rock, and they've done projects around the state of Arkansas. They're historical architects, and so we're very proud of that. And we are working on the historical rehabilitation of the auditorium as we speak, and fundraising efforts as well. The Dunbar School is a magnet, is now a magnet school. It was a magnet school about 20 years ago. Language, I think it was international studies. But now it's a new magnet school once again. It's business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. So yay. And that happened within the last 4 months. Lena Jordan, Nurse Lena Jordan. She was the head nurse here at Mosaic State Hospital. And when I say here, I mean in this building. Even though this building has been reconstructed, here at Mosaic, Templars of America, which was mentioned before, it was an insurance company. I'll go more into that when I talk about John Bush here in just a moment. It was not only the insurance company that was here, but there was a publishing company, there was a hospital here, there was also a bank in this building. And Lena Jordan was the head nurse here. And she was a very forward-thinking nurse. She had a program, a hospital that was dedicated for the care of disabled children that she bought later in later years. And behind you is the house that she bought that she had this hospital for disabled children. She also trained black nurses in this house, about 19 black nurses. And this house is twofold. She bought this house in the late 1930s, early 40s. However, this was John Bush's house that she bought. And I don't know if someone was telling the story about John Bush's house and it being bulldozed over and erected Dunbar Community Center. So this is the home that they were talking about, which I thought was very interesting. But I wanted you guys to see this, how enormous and beautiful that this house was during that time. John Bush passed on in 1916. However, again, Lena Jordan, not only did she train nurses, but there was a hospital named after her as well that sit at 1500 Pulaski Street. So she was definitely living her purpose and, developing a school for nurses as well, and then a hospital named in her honor also. And then to John E. Bush, one of the original founders of Mosaic Templars of America. Again, it was a insurance company, life, health, and death insurance. And John Bush was a young boy. He moved here from Tennessee with his mom. He was born into slavery, and his mom died when he was around 7 years old. And so one day, he was playing underneath a bridge, and someone saw him and said, "Hey, you need to be in school." So at the time, he went to it was Capitol View, was the high school then, because I think it was about 4 high schools before Dunbar. Capitol View, and he actually ended up teaching and becoming the principal at Capitol View. And he was a champion of the Black economic empowerment during his era. There were approximately 26 Mosaic Templars of America across the country. There were about 6 or 7 overseas. And Mosaic Templars was a fraternal organization for men, women, and children. Men, women, and children, which I think is also a missing link for us today, because a lot of our organizations, are either all men or all women. But I thought it was something special, and I probably constituted it, from my viewpoint, on the strength and the power that we had, because it included men, women, and children. Again, he had 27 across the country, so he was a millionaire during his time, and that was really unheard of. I didn't tell you the story, but I'll tell you really quickly here, is that he was on a street corner, probably here on 9th Street, and he was having a conversation with someone, and a little lady walked up to him. She had lost her husband and said, "Hey, I need some help. Can you help me, bury my husband?" And that's when he had an epiphany that he would start an insurance company for Black people. So I thought that was we never know where the greatness is coming from, but always count that it's definitely coming. We talked about Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington and John E. Bush were best friends. He also did the inaugural address to open this building in 1912. He started Mosaic Templars in around 1884, 1883, but they opened this building in 1912. I'm saying this building, but this is a replica of the building, because this building actually burned, I think maybe in 2012, 2013, and then they rebuilt it and opened in 2012. And from what I gather, they did a pretty good job of the replica. And I was sharing with someone earlier that when the building burned, there was a cornerstone in the building that had all the paperwork about who built the building, who started the organization, the architects that designed it, which I thought was phenomenal. So no one could second guess, who did this phenomenal work. And the connection for John Bush is that he was a peer of Charlotte Stevens, and he was the architect of the Dunbar Community Foundation. And what that truly means is that, again, we have to have someone that we look up to, that we revere. Can you imagine during that time having this building and people walking by, going to the grocery store, going to the doctor's office, and seeing this building and knowing, look how beautiful it was, right? How pristine it was, how proud that something that you could be proud of, right? And so you carry those positives in every encounter and everything that you do. That's really what pride is all about. So it was giving the community a lot of pride. So we've talked about a lot of the icons from Dunbar, not all of them. I just chose a few of them. And again, I'm not going in a lot of grave detail. I'd love for you to research these iconic individuals on your own and get the same inspiration that I get when I'm reading about their legacy and the things that they did. It is what carries me to help me believe, understand that we once again will have more than just neighborhoods. We will have our communities back again. Also, last but not least that I want to talk about is the Dreamland Ballroom. And when I look at the Dreamland Ballroom, it was built in 1902 by the Knights and Daughters of Taborian. It was a Black fraternal organization as well, as a fraternal, cultural, and commercial hub. It cost $75,000 in 1902 to build this building. And it was the community's money that built the building. The third floor housed the Dreamland Ballroom, which was called the Line. And during its heyday in the 1920s to the 50s, Dreamland was a critical stop on the Chitlin circuit. So you have people like Ella Fitzgerald, B.B. King, coming in to play, Ray Charles, Sammy Davis Jr., all came here during that time. So when we talk about the Green Book, right, and the Chitlin circuit, it has the same connotation. This was a safe place for them to come to perform. And recently, the Dunbar Historic Neighborhood Association, we had our fundraiser for the Florence Price Auditorium in the Dreamland Ballroom, and it was the Cotton Club theme. So everybody dressed up in the Cotton Club, and we had a glorious time, because I think, art and music is a huge part of our culture. It's a huge part of our right brain thinking, right? You have to have an outlet, right, to really cultivate you. And music and dancing, that's a joyous feeling. It's a joyous occasion, especially when you're dealing with so much each and every day. Even today, we know that music makes us feel good. And so I can't even imagine. Matter of fact, my mama went to Dreamland. I asked Mama, I said, Mama, did you ever go to Dreamland Ballroom? She says, yes. I said, all right. Because my mom was born in 1931. So yeah, she's probably stuck in there a couple of times or two. I want to thank you to everyone for honoring the legacy, the vision, and the greatness that builds and will build our future. To the pioneers of the Dunbar historic community, Charlotte Stevens, Florence B. Price, Sue Cowan, Lena Jordan, John E. Bush, your light still guides us. May we remember that legacy is not just about the past. It is a blueprint, a mirror, a call to build or to continue to build. And with gratitude, I appreciate you all. Any questions?
Comment rather than question, if I may. I want to thank you. That is so enlightening. And when you talk about those connections, it reminds me that I worked with Randy Hendrix's dad and got to know him when we were rehabilitating the Russellville Train Depot. Also with Mary Beth Cahoon and Suzanne, and now working with people like Kelly Houston Jones, who's getting more involved in our local history. And it's that connectivity that I want to mention, and I am certainly not the original thought to this idea, but when we talk about the Dreamland Ballroom, the Dunbar neighborhood, the Scipio Jones house, the Daisy Bates house, the Elaine grocery store, the Rosenwald School in Malvern, the McRae Sanatorium. Central High is one of the top 10 civil rights stops in the United States of America. Arkansas needs to have a civil rights trail. There are way too many important places whose stories are not being told, that need to be recognized on an Arkansas Civil Rights Trail that connect more, have more prominence, if you will, to the U.S. Civil Rights Trail. We need to be working on that.
Yeah, I
It
agree.
ties in with all of this that we're talking about.
I agree completely. And when you mention Rosenwald, let me just also mention that Dunbar was a Julius Rosenwald school as well. It took $400,000 to build Dunbar. It's a replica of Central High. Central High was $1.5 million to build, and he donated $67,000, well, actually $67,500,000. And I truly believe that connection, because if you remember earlier, someone talked about Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington. So, but Booker T. Washington was also dear friends with John Bush. So that means Rosenwald knew about Dunbar. He knew about the community. So even though Booker T died, I think in 1915, Dunbar was put on the slate to be built in 1927. I mean, if somebody's your friend, you always remember your friend. You remember that connection. And when he found out that Dunbar was being built, he decided, this is just my educated guess, that he would donate the money. Well, that's what I thought for a long time. However, there was research done recently through the National Park Service of the Julius Rosenwald School. There was a House Resolution Bill 3250 that was presented by Danny Lewis out of Chicago, and Senator French Hill was on that bill as well, to have this study done, and Dunbar School was one of them. Well, now, fast forward 2 years later, they had the study done, and it came out that Julius Rosenwald donated the money because him and Booker T. Washington were friends. I was like, yay. And that's what happens when you do the research, when you study the research and you start really connecting the dots. We then start to really understand what building really is all about, and we can transpose that into what we're really building today. But I do agree with you on the civil rights trail, because that's only going to bring tourism and awareness, the biggest part of that. Anyone else?
I would just say that everyone's heard that saying that we're only as strong as our weakest link. Well, I think we should all look around this room, because we have some strong links in this room.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I was sitting there and I was thinking, I was like, hey, this is the room right here. We're all about history. We're all about connecting. We need to all make it happen, because, you know, it's not just Black history or African-American history or American African history. It's about everybody's history, right? That's very significant and very important. And if we don't tell our own stories, and if we don't paint our own pictures, and we allow others to do it, it's not going to be told in the way that it should be. You know, I was talking to Doc here, and I was like, you know, I was like, look, I need to do oral history, videotape everybody, so people can remember this information, because it's no joke when someone walks around and they go, who was who and what was what, and and they think where they are at the moment in time, that's it. That's not the way the world should be, right? But again, I am who I am because of the book. As far as history is concerned, because of the book, The Heart of a Woman by Florence Price. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you for hanging out and being here today. Again, thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, the Black History Commission, and it's been a pleasure.